Hi, I'm Cess Busby. Welcome to First Act, the podcast series brought to you by Koshi's Business Builders, where we chat to inspiring innovators across the startup and small business ecosystem. If you're looking for small business inspiration, you can find us at www.koshisbusinessbuilders.com.au or join us on Facebook. Hi everybody, today I'm chatting with Usman Iftikhar. Usman is co-founder of Catalysr, an accelerator program for migrapreneurs. He's the 2018 Commonwealth Young Person of the Year, and he's also one of the honorees on our inaugural Koshi's Business Builders Power List. Welcome, Usman.
So, Usman, if we could just go back a little bit, you came to Australia in 2013, and like a lot of migrants, you had struggles trying to find employment. You're a mechanical engineer, this massively qualified person, and yet it was incredibly difficult for you to get work in your chosen field. So can you tell me a little bit about how disheartening that might have been and then the steps that you kind of took to get yourself out of that?
Sure. So I came to Australia in 2013 and with an mechanical engineering degree, as you said. And what I also did here was I did a master's in engineering management from University of Wollongong. And the thinking was that, okay, I've done this engineering degree from Pakistan. I've studied here. I've got some work experience both in Pakistan as well as sort of doing some internships and so on here locally. So I shouldn't have a problem getting into employment, but that wasn't the case. I found it extremely difficult, as you said, to get into any meaningful employment. So I was doing a lot of casual work, like working at 7-Eleven, BP, the sort of stores and so forth. And did that for a couple of years after graduation. And I particularly remember this one incident where, that was sort of like the time where I decided that I want to quit that and actually do something different. And that was working a night shift at a BP down in Queen Park, and just basically, with nothing else to do, looking around, trying to I guess, make myself busy, and there's the whole store is empty, and there's some delivery that I need to put on the shelf, and so I'm just walking out and looking at different things. And one of the things that I noticed is while I'm putting the delivery out is that there is cat food and dog food that I have to put out. And on that, basically there is a chicken in there. And so my mind, because it's so frustrating and just wants some challenge, it's thinking, why do us humans use basically one animal to make food for another animal while they can, just eat each other in the wild if they want to? And that's the sort of moment where I went, okay, well, maybe I'm just overthinking too much and, I'm just not using my sort of thinking and skills clearly and properly here. So I need to do something different. So it took me less than a week to, resign from that work and go, okay, well, what can I do and how can I create my own job? And then I guess that sort of then led down the pathway of, if I want to create my own job, then, the easiest way to do that is through starting a business, because I've tried setting up resumes, tried networking events and conferences and expos, but none of them have worked for me. Excuse me. So based off of that, I also want to do something social because coming from Pakistan, I've seen a lot of different social issues, and I wanted to do sort of give back as well, and this was a great opportunity for me to do that. So I saw there's a program in Parramatta that was happening, which was a program for young people who wanted to start a social enterprise. So I applied. I wasn't really sure if I'm going to get in, but I was pretty lucky to get into that. And then through that program, essentially met my co-founder, Jake Muller, and we were discussing about a bunch of different ideas and, what I can and can't start. And then just, talking to different mentors and trying to sort of figure it out, that what hit me was, why don't I try to solve a problem for myself? Which is that I'm trying to create a job for myself, and why can't that be a problem and a premise for my own business or my own social enterprise? And that led to the pathway for Catalysr, where basically there's so many other immigrants and refugees that I've seen working at a lot of these casual jobs, like driving Ubers, working at petrol stations and so on, who could be, using their skill set in a much better way. And so, like, my thinking was that if I wanted to use entrepreneurship as a way out, they also have that opportunity. So that was the thinking behind Catalysr. And then we just gave it a go around a pilot to see whether it even works. In our sort of first program, we took 10 people in partnership with the local community migrant resource center in Parramatta. And then through that, out of those 10, actually 3 of them actually started a business that's running to this day. And so that was something which we went, okay, there's some potential here. We don't really know what we're doing. We're just getting started and setting it all up. But even then, we're seeing some good results and outcomes. So, if we do this properly and if we sort of put all of our effort into this, then maybe this can become something really interesting. And so, yes, now, obviously, Catalysr has been going on for a while and has done pretty well.
So you were talking about back in Pakistan, you'd seen a lot of social issues, and that was one of the drivers for wanting to develop a social enterprise. Was there anything specific that you're talking about in that area?
I mean, Pakistan has a lot of issues from education to, poverty to women's rights to climate change. But like climate change, I think is probably one of those key issues that is sort of front and center. Even if people don't realize that as climate change, it's definitely affecting Pakistan. So whether there's droughts or floods, I personally got injured in one of the floodings that happened back in 2010 in Pakistan. And so like I've had a very sort of vivid memory of that. And I've sort of seen a lot of people suffer from like heat strokes and things like that. And given that my parents are also like medical doctors in Pakistan, we've come across a lot of these different stories. And then when you put the 2 and 2 together, you can see how climate change is affecting people right now, whether that's their livelihood, whether that's their health and sort of other outcomes. And so like that's the driver that I really want to sort of focus on as well. And looking at different ways in which we can deal with that.
Yeah. So is there any reason then that's not the avenue that you pursued?
Well, I mean, initially my idea when I applied to the School for Social Entrepreneurs was to start like a renewable energy clean tech business. And the thinking behind that was Australia is such an abundant country. We've got solar, wind, all these possibilities, and we can do so much more here. And again, their thinking there was that, there's not much support there for renewable energy and clean tech businesses. So maybe we can do some sort of consulting work or helping people out or even set up our own. And when I sort of started researching, I found there's another organization at the time that was just setting up called Energy Lab, who are themselves like an accelerator for clean tech startups. And they were at a very early stage at that time. So I went, look, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's better if I sort of, collaborate with them. So I sent them my business plan and said, this is what I've been thinking. And obviously, you guys are 2 steps ahead of me, so you can sort of, take it and run with it. And funnily enough, it went a full circle. So after, leaving that and then starting Catalysr, after about 6 months to a year, I got a sort of reply back saying, hey, we're interested in having a chat with you. And I met with their co-founder and director, Piers, who said, look, you're someone who understands accelerators since you're running one, and you also have an understanding of energy, given your sort of engineering background. So why don't you come and work with us as well? So that was like a way for me to also just do some consulting work with Energy Lab, we ran a hackathon on electric vehicles in Sydney and so forth. So yeah, I have been involved in that space. It's just that Catalysr has been the main focus. Yeah. And even some of the initiatives that are coming through Catalysr are also addressing climate change. So we had a renewable energy startup that came out of the last cohort, Robert, which is started by Robert, who's from Zimbabwe, and that's called Green Grid Energy, and they're doing a microgrid for Zimbabwe. There's another one which is called Natural Planner, and what they have is they're making these sort of palm leaf plates. They're biodegradable, 100% biodegradable, and you can sort of, do that, and they're bringing them from India to Australia as like a way to replace plastic waste. Or we have Sayed is looking water democracy, so we try to be able to create new water purification technologies to solve the water crisis. So there's a lot of these initiatives that are also started by some of the migrant entrepreneurs that are focused on that as well.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a real focus on using technology and entrepreneurship to solve these real-world problems. Is that what you wanted to do with Catalysr?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we wanted to be more than just, a regular app or things like that. But also, part of it is also there's a sort of spirit of migrants and refugees as well, because when you get them into a design thinking or a lean startup session and you ask them to think about a problem that they want to solve for a customer, their thinking automatically, including myself, goes to like big social problems that we've seen through our own lives, because we haven't like lived through a lot of privilege. And so that's something that I think is sort of like ingrained because of people's life experiences. So like a lot of people choose to work on social problems themselves, and we don't necessarily have to tell them to do that. Like that just comes from within.
Yeah. And you also mentioned during your own process there was considerable kind of mentoring. How vital do you think mentoring is to the success of an entrepreneur or startup?
I think mentoring is crucially important, and the reason why is because obviously I've tested it on myself. Like we've got so many mentors that supported me personally as well as Catalysr, but I've seen how that makes a difference in lives of other some early stage entrepreneurs in particular, because I do a lot of coaching and working with startups, and what I see is that there are very common questions that come up, and if you sort of live through them, like you can offer like a lot of like really basic advice that helps people solve a lot of problems really quickly. So I mean, it just helps people move much faster, helps people solve problems much more effectively. But not all mentoring advice is right. So people also need to filter through, if anyone has any particular agenda when they're providing certain advice and things like that. But holistically, what I found is that mentoring is really useful. And the other thing that mentoring provides is networks, right? So for a lot of times, like if you actually have mentors who are senior or who are more connected than you are, then they also, if you do what they want you to do, or if you follow their advice, generally they're also open to connecting you with other investors, connecting you with their network for customers and so on as well. So it's not just network mentoring for the sake of mentoring either.
Yeah, and I guess as an entrepreneur or a small business owner, it can be really isolating. Sometimes you're just the only one trying to come up with the solution. So having someone to bounce off, I think, must be vital.
Absolutely, 100%. And we've seen that so much. And the other sort of reason of running a accelerator program is to connect people as well. Because, a lot of times, like your friends and family don't really understand what you're going through when you're starting a business. But having that cohort of people, whether that's your peers or whether that's your mentors and advisors, is really, really vital to sort of, struggle to be part of that struggle with you, and then you don't feel alone. And yeah, it's just like no one individually can solve the tough problems and decisions that business offers us. And a lot of them are sort of ethical dilemmas. And so it's really the more eyes and the more ears that you can put on some of this stuff, the better it is.
Yeah. I also read that last year you were the Commonwealth Young Person of the Year, and you got an award from Prince Harry, was it?
Yeah, that's true.
How was that? Was that completely unexpected?
It was an alternate reality. So I did a program with, after starting Catalysr with another organisation called Foundation for Young Australians, and they've got this amazing program called Young Social Pioneers, where they bring on a lot of young social entrepreneurs together and just do boot camps and retreats and just get them to build a community. And they nominated me for that award. So for different countries, different, youth organizations nominate people, and individuals can nominate themselves as well. So that was completely unexpected that I'm going to win it. I initially found out that I've been the Pacific, the winner for the sort of regional Pacific area. And for me, it was even that's a massive achievement. But then they were like, we'll fly to London, all the winners, and you've got to stand on stage. And even at that time, I was like, surely people in Asia or somewhere else are going to win. There's no way. But I was very, very lucky. And I think one of the reasons why is also because migration is such a topical issue these days. Yeah. Particularly because of, what's happening internationally. So, yeah, I think that would have contributed as well. So I consider myself extremely lucky. It's just, thinking about it, it's like 1 out of 1.4 billion young people living in all of Commonwealth countries. It's just a massive honor.
Have you been able to use it, leverage the award? Has it helped you draw more attention to Catalysr or get more publicity?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been really, really amazing because it helped us, get more funding, which is always important to sort of continue and to contribute to our cause. Helps us get a lot more media and sort of, reach as well. Particularly with the Commonwealth, we got noticed by the UN, and they were doing this report, which is a policy guide on entrepreneurship for refugees and migrants. So they were looking at different countries, and there was a sort of joint study between UNHCR, International Organization for Migration, and the UN Conference on Trade and Development. And we, after sort of this award, we also got recognized there as a sort of part of that report as one of the best case practice. And I got invited to do a keynote at the UN World Investment Forum last year, where we launched this report with the Secretary General of some of these organizations. So that's been just absolutely amazing just to be a part of that. And I don't think that would have happened if we didn't have that award sort of backing us up, because it provides you with that super credibility that then helps you in so many different ways. And it's kind of continuing to compound as well over time, whether that's working with different governments on different initiatives. For example, the Commonwealth Secretary invited me to do a sort of speaking gig with all the Pacific youth in Fiji last year. And they had young people from Tuvalu and Cook Islands and Fiji and so many different places. And it was all about social enterprise and all about social change and some of the issues that they're facing with the UN and with a bunch of other sort of bodies present and funding it. So it was great to just have that sort of explosion opportunities to connect with more people and sort of share ideas.
Yeah. And what do you think are the main challenges that migrapreneurs face when trying to get their ventures off the ground then?
So again, there are 3 to 4 different things, the sort of challenges, but also opportunities we say, and that's what we also provide. So one of the biggest things is network. When you come to a new country, you just don't have access to a network, whether that's for finding your customers, whether that's, mentors, whether that's for investment. So that's something that we help them plug into, a ready-made network that's also sort of growing because of the network effects over time. The second thing we have is for a lot of people who move to a different country, they don't really understand the landscape and the environment, so their confidence in their own ability actually drops significantly. This is something that we've seen that, people might be amazing engineers or amazing accountants or any of the other fields, but once they come to a different country, particularly Australia, and, once they get rejected a lot of times, then even though they're resilient, they find it really difficult to do something new or do something creative with it. And so this is another opportunity for us to just empower them and build their self-confidence. So it's a lot of that soft skill stuff as well. The third one, I guess, is just basic skills and capabilities, which might be missing, particularly if you want to start a business. So for a lot of migrant entrepreneurs, depending on the country they're coming from, they've got very different business landscapes. Excuse me. So if you're coming from, say, a country which does not have a lot of regulation or a lot of different things, then, obviously you're going to struggle in Australia if you don't follow the same rules. Because, here we've got a bunch of different regulations and legislations for good reason. Similarly, there's also the sort of piece where migrapreneurs can, they can start an amazing project or whatever, but if just don't know how to get the word out, or if they can't find funding, then that limits their sort of progress. And oftentimes you find migrapreneurs are sort of focused on either their own community, a specific cultural community, or specific region, and that's something that also limits them. It's harder to scale. So breaking down some of those barriers is something that is hard on an individual level, and that's where I think we also provide that value, because we can sort of collectivize that and introduce people to each other.
Yeah. So in terms of barriers and building resilience, from your own experience, what's the best way that people can break down barriers and build resilience?
For breaking down barriers, I think that it's obviously everyone's responsibility, but on an individual level, people have to, from a migrant perspective, you have to put yourself out there and try stuff, right? You have to, just be open to new opportunities, different things, programs, and so on. But at the same time, you also have to just accept that failure is a part of the equation, And, the more times you get knocked back, it shouldn't sort of put you down. It should be seen as an opportunity to grow. It should be seen as an opportunity to do something different as well. And so that's something that's sort of my personal message, right, which is that although I was getting rejected from all the different job opportunities, I didn't give up sort of pursuing that. And even if when I did, I only did as a way to sort of go around the system. And so a lot of people can sort of think about that and see opportunities, and they do as well. So we did this study, a research study done by CGU Insurance, who's one of our partners. They looked at migrant small business owners across Australia, and they found that, 33% of Australian small businesses are run by migrants. And out of that, the great stat was that 83% of these business owners did not have a business back in their own country. So that's really massive, right? A lot of them have not had a business. So whether that's through necessity or whether they've spotted an opportunity that's specific to Australia, we don't know. But it's just really interesting stat to sort of look into a bit deeper and see why that is. And sort of my personal gut feel is that most of that comes from that necessity that, if you don't have the right opportunities, if you have those barriers, then you go and you start your own business. And we've seen that over and over again.
Mm. Well, it is very typical of Australian history, isn't it? Like you get these waves, the different waves of immigration that happen throughout our country's history. And through those, we've just developed a very multicultural society, like the Chinese coming, the Italians coming, the Greeks coming, the Indians coming, like Pakistanis coming. Like, it is quite amazing how our culture has evolved simply because of the wonderful influence of migrants. So, yeah, good on all those migrant people that have created new businesses. That's what I say.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And even right now, we've got the highest, per capita rate of migration. Like 28% of Australian population is one of these. This is we're talking about first generation, right? So, it's a very significant number of people.
Yeah. So what's next for you guys at Catalysr?
Yeah, so a few things. Firstly, we're running a sort of cohort 5 this time around. What we've done is that this time around we're also just breaking up the 6 months program into 2 separate paces. So the first one we're really ambitious. We want to put 100 people through, and then help a lot of people at that early idea stage to sort of go to the next stage. And then in the second stage, help the sort of top 20 startups focus. And this time around, we're also providing a couple of them funding as well of 10K. This is a pre-seed to be able to, incorporate their business and, spend some money building stuff that they need to. In the future, what we also want to do is potentially look at, funding more startups and to be able to find a partner who can help us with funding, particularly startups, because we've got partners who help us run the program, but we don't have that yet. The second thing we're looking at is scaling to other states. So sort of our next go-to is Victoria. And we're talking to, a few different partners in Melbourne. So, there might be some good news soon on that front as well.
Do you think we're doing enough in New South Wales to support innovation and entrepreneurship?
I think that the initiative by state government, the New South Wales Sydney Startup Hub, has been fantastic. And that's something that we've utilized a lot just because it provides that central hub where we get together. I know that there's plans to build a Western Sydney Startup Hub as well in Parramatta, in North Parramatta, so we are in touch with them as well. So I think that those 2 are really great initiatives. Obviously, Jobs for New South Wales is just generally providing grants and funding and support, which has been amazing. But I think there's definitely an opportunity to do a lot more. Particularly, I think what we do lack is a vision for how do we position ourselves as a state or as a city that wants to be at the forefront of innovation. And I think there's a lot of opportunities that we do have that we can take, right? So as an example, the way that I think about this from a migrant perspective is that we've got so many migrants in Sydney or in New South Wales that why are we not getting them to sell and scale in their own countries? So for example, and that's something that we also want to do at Catalysr, which is, yes, you can start a business here, but we know the Australian market is really tiny. And, if you want to say if you're from China and you're starting a business there, why don't you grow your business in China? So we recently partnered with Hair Market HQ because they help people do that. And it's a similar sort of thing for other countries and other sort of areas. And because you're a migrant who's lived in both countries personally, you understand the cultures and customs and ways of doing business in most cases. That is extremely valuable. So how do we really leverage that is something that I think we're not doing at the moment properly. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity there personally.
Yeah. So any advice for a migrant or refugee that's got an idea ticking away in their head and is reluctant to get it out there?
I mean, the first advice is like what Nike says, just do it. That's the best thing that like I've sort of gotten advice for. There's a lot of people who sit down and keep planning, but not actually do stuff. I think that like you should use the opportunity to test stuff, put it out there, see what people think, and then take that feedback and then improve on it. Don't like plan for 3 years and then launch something really big and then realize it doesn't work. That's the sort of main thing that people try to wait too long before they release their products or they release their idea into the world. So just do it, just set it up. And then if you're interested, then, we also definitely apply to Catalysr and we can provide some of that support to help you get to that next stage.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Usman. Thanks so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it as well.
And that's it for First Act. Don't forget, if you're looking for small business inspiration and advice, head to koshisbusinessbuilders.com.au.